In the aftermath of World War II, investigations by U.S. officials uncovered evidence of heinous human experiments conducted in Germany and Japan, constituting war crimes. Despite similar discoveries in both defeated nations, the outcomes differed greatly. In Germany, the U.S. took a leading role in bringing Nazi physicians to justice and exposing their wrongdoings to the world. Conversely, in Japan, the U.S. took a significant part in hiding the evidence of biological warfare experiments and protecting the wrongdoers from prosecution. Unit 731, a covert department of the Kwangtung Army with the innocuous-sounding name of the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Established before the U.S. entered World War II, this diabolical unit conducted sickening experiments on prisoners with the sole aim of testing, producing, and storing biological weapons. Despite it being banned by international treaties, under the ruthless leadership of General Shiroishi, Unit 731 carried out thousands of horrifying experiments on prisoners, including vivisections without anesthesia, injections of venereal diseases, amputations, organ removal, starvation, and even freezing people alive to examine the effects of frostbite. The chilling tale of Unit 731 continues to unravel, as it's revealed that not a single one of the thousands of prisoners who underwent experimentation survived. Most of the subjects were Chinese, but some were Russian or Korean. But the horrors don't end there. The Japanese military took these deadly pathogens and canisters filled with virulent forms of the plague, dropped them on nearby towns, and witnessed their lethal effects. Shockingly, thousands of these lethal bombs are still out there in the Chinese countryside, causing people to suffer from effects of the Japanese dirty bombs to this day. The Japanese even planned to launch a diabolical mission called Operations Cherry Blossoms at Night, where they would infect fleas with the plague and drop them on San Diego using planes stored aboard submarines. But the end of the war prevented the mission from being executed. In the aftermath of the war, the Allied forces approached Unit 731. And the Japanese leaders ordered its destruction, which included over 150 buildings and 2 airports. As for the remaining prisoners, they were brutally killed before the Allied forces arrived, and the individuals who conducted the horrific experiments scattered, many without ever facing justice. The Nazi scientific experiments were rationalized based on 3 principles: racism, eugenics, and national interest during wartime. The victims primarily were Jews, Roma, and Soviet prisoners of war. They were considered to be inferior to the German Aryan race. The Nazi Party's propaganda campaign, which was particularly successful among physicians, emphasized the threat of racial contamination and uncontrolled breeding among those with unfit genes, which posed a danger to the German people. As the war began in 1939, the idea was created that it was unreasonable for the flower of German youth to face death on the battlefield, unless these racially inferior beings were also sacrificed for the war effort. Unit 731's barbaric experiments involved deliberately infecting Chinese prisoners of war and civilians with deadly diseases and subjecting them to bombs loaded with infectious particles. Not a single person survived these inhumane tests. Those who managed to survive the infections were killed to be dissected. And in the final days of the war, all remaining prisoners were murdered to cover up the evidence. Some experiments also involved exposing subjects to freezing temperatures and other extreme conditions to observe their reactions. Moreover, the Japanese military units conducted real-world tests of disease-spreading weapons on both enemy soldiers and innocent civilians. By unleashing plague-infected fleas in China, the experimenters caused thousands of additional deaths, even though they failed to develop an efficient and controlled method for dispersing such agents. The Japanese used 2 justifications for their inhumane experiments. They believed that the Chinese and Koreans were racially inferior, and they often appealed to patriotism. Their main goal was not to preserve Japanese racial purity, but rather to eliminate weaker populations and expand the Japanese empire into their territories. The Japanese also claimed that the prisoners used as experimental subjects were suspected resistors or communists who would have been executed regardless of their use in experiments. John W. Thompson is a key figure whose contributions to post-war events have been under-recognized. Although born to American parents in Mexico and educated in the United States, he served in World War II as an officer in the Royal Canadian Air Force. With his diverse expertise in psychiatry, medical research, and high-altitude flying, Thompson was well equipped to assess German war crimes defendants for underlying psychopathology and evaluate wartime research in various areas. Despite being offered the chair of physiology at the University of Ottawa in 1946, Thompson declined this opportunity to pursue other endeavors. After the war, Thompson was tasked with evaluating the results of German aeronautical stress research, and he discovered that much of the research was conducted unethically. Through personal contacts and diplomacy, Thompson later became the Secretary General of the International Scientific Commission, and his behind-the-scenes influence was instrumental in the development of the Nuremberg Code and informed consent, earning him the title Godfather of these ethical principles. Thompson's scientific intelligence team was responsible for preserving and microfilming a vast collection of German research records, which were later used by Nuremberg prosecutors in the doctor's trial. In addition, they conducted interviews with many Nazi scientists. However, they never offered immunity from prosecution in exchange for access to scientific information. Thompson's personal diplomacy played a significant role in shaping the US-led response to the discoveries, including close coordination between scientific intelligence work and war crimes investigation units. The Japanese scientists displayed greater strategic intelligence than their German counterparts. They collaborated closely to devise a response to the American investigations and shrewdly recognized that the US interest in their data provided them with a valuable bargaining tool. They adopted a tactic reminiscent of the Scheherazade in the Arabian Nights, revealing only enough information during each interrogation to maintain US interests and leaving crucial details unsaid, as a means of demonstrating the worth of their continued liberty. Dr. Norbert H. Fell, a civilian employee of Camp Detrick, was the first American scientist to become aware of activities that were clearly war crimes. Fell responded by adopting Kamei's proposal, which almost certainly originated with Ishii. Fell proceeded to inform each interrogated subject that the investigation was solely to obtain scientific and technical data, and was not concerned with the war crimes. It is unclear who authorized Fell to offer such assurances, as Fell lacked the military authority to make such a move on his own. However, in an addendum to his final report dated June 24, 1947, Fell noted that the information received so far was proving of great interest and would have significant value. At a conference yesterday at which the Chief of the Chemical Corps and representatives of the War, State, and Justice Departments were present, it was informally agreed that the recommendations of the Commander-in-Chief, Far East Command, and the Chief Chemical Corps would be accepted that all information obtained in this investigation would be held in intelligence channels and not used for war crimes programs. Other scholars have already documented the consequences of concealing Japanese medical war crimes. In contrast to the United States, the Soviet Union tried and sentenced 12 Japanese military personnel from Unit 731 for war crimes and subsequently published the proceedings. However, US authorities dismissed the proceedings as communist propaganda, despite the fact that the information presented was largely accurate in retrospect. The relatively light sentences given to the perpetrators indicated that, like the Americans, the Soviets may have traded leniency for access to data. Dealing with the Unit 731 today, the horrifying legacy of Unit 731 persists, with research being conducted worldwide despite efforts by politicians and governments to reveal the truth. The facts remain shrouded in shadow and mired in controversy. The Chinese government demands answers, seeking to hold Japan accountable for its crimes. Meanwhile, the Japanese are reluctant to confront their shameful history, while the United States struggles with its own demons. These conflicting perspectives make it difficult to unravel the truth about this dark chapter in human history, with unresolved differences that continue to complicate matters.